Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kavinsky's Tutorials. Just a bit different. Don't worry, it'll be screen recording again soon as normal. I just thought I'd do the introduction a bit differently today. So I'm going to do a demo of some of DMT Cymatics presets for Aparillo. I think Aparillo is super cool. I did a walkthrough on it, an hour-long walkthrough. It's one of the best videos I think I've ever done on this channel. I put an absolutely huge amount of work into it. Did that back in 2021. If you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. But anyway, even if you don't know how to use Aparillo, this video will give you some idea, because as well as demoing the presets, I'll go into a little bit about what's going on in some of them. So for people who maybe know Aparillo, it could be a good refresher or might give you some creative inspiration. For people who don't know it, it'll introduce you to it. And then if you want to dive deeper, go and watch my hour-long tutorial. I'd love to do the whole video outside, but there's too much noise from time to time. Airplanes, dogs, drunk people, whatever. So yeah, I'll go in to my room and record it in a bit more quiet in there, and then just come back out here for the outro. Enjoy the video. Okay, so back to a more familiar sounding mic, huh? So first a very quick look at the UI. Again, you know, all the details are in my hour-long walkthrough. It's a link, there's a link in the pinned comment. So here we've got the main synth page, dual operator FM synth. We control things like the ratio and FM amount here. This shift slider is hugely important. I'll talk about it a lot in this video, so I won't go into it now. Here we see two LFOs. We have more details of those here. By the way, when you see buttons like this under a slider, that means that we can modulate that or change something about the slider using loads of different options that we get here that might be slightly different in different places. So all the kind of main synth controls here. Over here we've got the effects section with a filter spatializer. That can be kind of like a resonator, or it can be like a delay, or it can be a bit like a reverb. Depends really on the size and the feedback settings and so on. Panner here, delay, reverb. Here, modulation envelope. Tap down here, you can also modulate these. Here, the amp envelope. And here, this really cool thing, the orbiter, where this ball moves around, and when it comes close to these objects, it can influence the sound in certain ways. For example, this here is filter resonance. So you long press on that and you get controls here. So for example, here we're setting in how much the filter resonance will be increased or decreased when this ball comes close to it. We can also make it set up in a way that when the ball comes close to this, it will increase the overall level of the patch or decrease it. And we can also set panning here. This section, you can record your automation. All different settings for that are in here. There's also a very cool record setting where you can map MIDI notes to specific setups of the different objects. And I'll show you that in one of the patches later in the video. Tap here to go back to the synth page. Tap here, by the way, to turn this section off completely. Back on the synth page also, here we have this arpeggiator. Arpeggiator is very non-standard. If you see here, I'm just using one note to trigger this. Here, the melody that the arp is playing is actually coming from this shift control. So, you know, we can have ascending melodies, descending melodies, and so on, all sorts of stuff. Now I'll jump through to something else. So one unfortunate thing, I wish that Bytes would implement subfolders for user presets, because when I imported all James's, all DMT Cymatics patches in here, they're all just jumbled up with my own patches. That really drives me crazy. In general, I wish devs would pay a bit more attention to preset systems. They could often be improved. So here, this patch, 100 light years. Let's just check first of all. So if we go to the envelope page, a very important note, is it unison or is it polyphonic? So the unison mode, you can have 16 voices, and that can be set up in a way like a typical sort of unison type spread for just a very fat sound. Or you can set it up with different scale options. So it's really interesting, this, and loads of other stuff you can do with this. And then you can have that all being arpeggiated. When the arpeggiator does stuff, what it's doing is basically triggering these different voices, even if it's a monophonic patch. So let's hear this. So this here, I'm just going to latch one note. I'm just going to turn on, no, it's already on here, velocity. So let me put in a slightly quieter note. So bring this down a wee bit. So over here, if I go into the effects section, the reverb is very heavy in this patch. I'll bring it down so we can hear a lot better what's going on. I'll just bring this back up actually. So if we go to the main synth page, you can see there's a lot of modulation going on here. And you can see that different voices are being modulated in different ways, right? So here the FM amount is different for all these different voices, and how that is and how it's evolving over time, if it's evolving, is all set up by settings here. So LFO1 doing a lot. Now here, this shift section, here we have a linear adjustment of that, and that's bringing in melodic elements. And the ARP is, in a way, just being used to add a little variation and complexity. So if I bring the ARP up fully, for example, you can hear what the ARP is like there. And, you know, I could play with things like the decay there and the rate. So here we've got no ARP, here full ARP. Now I'm going to just reset that patch a second. So we got the reverb again now. So let's look at this shift section. So you see here now, the shift section is set the same for every voice. And so now there's no melody. Now here, this is set to just affect every third voice. We can set it for odd voices, even voices, all voices, and so on. Just reset it again. I kind of wish there was a little reset button actually for each patch. We'll look more at the shift in a minute. We'll look at it loads of times through this video, so don't worry about that if it's not clear yet. So the orbiter's off here, but if I turn it on, we suddenly get a really lovely evolving soundscape. Listen to that. And so I could go in here and turn this off, and now I could just move this around manually. In here, another thing that's important is the radius. Now, by the way, I find when I use the mouse and also when I use finger, I find that I sometimes don't get this popping up when I long press. So it seems to me like Sugar Bytes need to adjust that a little bit. Here you've got a really important control, the radius amount. So here you're setting how close the ball has to get to that before it will actually trigger it. So if you see now, it's got to get super close before it actually triggers it. So we can change that. You know, put this up very high and you see now it's being triggered. And now it's being triggered but less, so it's slowed down, right? And if I bring it all the way over here, it's no longer triggering that. Super cool. Okay, let's go to another patch. Alien Mind Control. So here we have something that sounds almost like a kind of heavy guitar riff. So tap here to go back to the synth page. So that kind of riff sound is mainly coming from this shift control, the way it's being modulated. If we tap here, we see LFO1 is modulating that, and that it's affecting the upper voices more. So you see it's kind of thinner down in this bottom part, it's thicker up here. So let's change that so that all voices are modulated. Right, you hear that now? Now the size slider in the spatializer here is doing a lot. You see that's also being modulated. Let me bring that down. And you hear what the spatializer is doing there. I kind of prefer this a bit cleaner like that. It's a bit messy for me with that spatializer. Now, another preset. So you can hear here that clearly we have a melody, and that's being played by this shift slider. So if I take this down, maybe you'd think, oh well, why is there still a melody? Have a guess. What do you think? You see this still moving? Why? Well, that would be because this is being affected by the orbiter section. So this here is the shift thing. So let's say, for example, I didn't want that to be modulated, right? But what if I still wanted the orbiter to be doing stuff? Well, I just long press here. Again, though, having some difficulty getting this to trigger. It's really annoying. It's basically because it's sometimes moving when I tap on it. So I can just bring amount down there. And so now we still have the orbiter going on, but it's no longer doing anything to the shift setting. Okay, another patch. Let's go for a bass one. This is really nice. So I love the way the ARP in this patch is adding a bit of texture. So let me just play with its settings a little bit. So there you hear what the ARP's doing. It's changing the speed of the ARP. We can change the direction here. And we can mix those back in again. So let me just go back to the original patch. Just change that rate. That's it without the orbiter. So again, what the orbiter is doing here is subtle, but it's nice. So you know, Aparillo can definitely, although it's marketed as a synth for soundscapes and stuff, and you know, that kind of thing, like movie soundtracks and everything. Of course you can do all kinds of things with this, and you can definitely do conventional dance-based electronic genres if you want. Now here's another patch, Extraction. So it reminds me a bit of a 70s horror movie soundtrack, right? So obviously the ARP is doing a lot here. So that's it with no ARP. So you see, with no ARP, the shift section is still doing a lot of work. Like for example, if I change the quantization here, you hear at the moment that's basically quantizing all these different frequencies of the different voices that are all sounding simultaneously. It's quantizing them into a minor scale. And now that's major. And here's just unison, and so on and so on. Let's put it back to minor. Let's bring up the ARP. Bring that rate down a little bit. So if you want a cleaner sound, let's take a look around. Let's just go back to the original patch, actually. So you hear how it's a little bit dirty? So a lot of that's coming from this resonance here. Now it's nice and clean. Or of course we could also change the filter type. Brilliant. Now, this one's interesting. So this is a good example of the orbiter being set to be triggered with MIDI. So you can see that here, right? It's got the little keyboard there instead of this little thing. So let's see that in action. So you see here, let me turn off the latch here. So you see how when I press different notes, the orbiter, the ball is moving around. So cool. As you can see, everybody, it would take a hell of a lot of time to make these presets. This pack is about $5, I think, maybe something like that. It's made with a lot of skill, so hats off to James from DMT Cymatics. Also, just to mention, I don't know about you, but for me, the most interesting thing really about buying preset packs is to analyze them. You know, analyze the presets yourself to get inspiration for making your own patches and become more aware of the possibilities of a given synth. Like, you know, that $5 or whatever could give you really like many, many days of enjoyment just going in and analyzing the patches like I'm doing in this session. Just go and do that yourself. Okay, another one. Let me get it from the list here. Okay, light show. So let me latch this. So once again, the ARP and Shift control doing a lot. Now notice though that if we latch a note, things quickly get quiet. And how would we remedy that? Well, in one way would be bring up the sustain here in the envelope section. Right? So back on the synth page. So here, okay, we got, the typical ARP going on here, and Shift. You can see that these do a lot of heavy lifting in these patches. Just bring the level down a little bit over here. So here, it's really important to understand, not all of these things are modulators. Some just change the curve here, right? But basically, different curve will give us a different melody. Right? And we can get, now here we've got an ascending melody, and now we've got a descending melody. But now look, we can go in here and make this apply to just, let's bring the rate down. Now that is being applied to just even voices, voice 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. Here it's being applied to all voices. Here it's being applied to every third voice, and so on. And this can be unipolar or bipolar. Now, by the way, you can change the rate of the LFO here. But that's not really that noticeable in this patch, just to mention. So let's try something, let's try LFO1 here. Now it will be noticeable, right? And we got a lot more controls for the LFO. This can get pretty complicated. I would definitely recommend you watch my full walkthrough for more about the LFO section. It's very deep. We got all these different options here as well that I go into in that video in detail. Here, the mod envelope, right? Affecting things. And we can loop that so it's more like an LFO. Again, I go into all this stuff in my detailed walkthrough. Now, let me just reset that patch a second. So here, comb filter is doing a lot to color the sound here. Obviously, changing filter types is going to do a lot. Plus, by the way, we can change the order of the, the spatializer can go into the filter, or the filter can go into the spatializer. And remember, of course, we can modulate all this. This would probably be more interesting without the ARP, actually. Yeah. Oh, lovely. So, remember, you want to modulate that more. You could go in and turn the modulator, turn on the orbiter and make sure that you're affecting the filter. Try and long press this damn thing. This definitely needs to be fine-tuned. It would drive you absolutely crazy. Nice. Lovely. And I can record that. And we can change the we can change the speed and everything in here, and we can change how long we record for and all that sort of stuff. Okay, let's go on to, I think the last one maybe I'll do. So, there are 60 presets in this pack, I think I've shown you that these are very interesting already. I'll leave you to explore the rest if you buy the pack. And remember, there's a link there in the pinned comment. And as I say, if you really do want a very deep understanding of Aparillo, my 1-hour walkthrough is an absolute must-watch, I reckon. So also linked in the pinned comment. And also, while we're here, I'd love to just thank Bytes, by the way, for having sponsored me to make their official walkthrough on Dialect, right, their last release, and having paid me very generously, honestly, to do it. And I just hope that more developers step up to the table and support the work of myself and other YouTubers in this niche in that kind of fair way, Like, it's genuinely refreshing, honestly, in this scene where mainly, I have to say, unfortunately, although there are some exceptions, the exchange of value between YouTubers like myself and most developers is just not a very fair one. The developers are getting much better side of the deal. So hats off to Bytes for being a really decent bunch of people and a great example to the dev community. Okay, I just had to get that out of my system, honestly. And honestly, thanks Bytes, and yeah, they're a really good bunch of people, I reckon. So orbiter here. We turned this orbiter off, and it's really different. Now we've just got a very nice drone with changes in harmonics. Right, have a listen. It's lovely. So this is mainly coming from the modulation of the filter, cutoff, and resonance. So I can just take those off. So if you noticed, these were set up so that one had a positive modulation, both being modulated by LFO1, but one, well actually this one here, okay, it's unipolar and negative, and this one's set up actually to be bipolar, okay. Now there we've got it just positive. And again, we could play around with all this sort of stuff. And so again, obviously, going and changing things in here is going to make a huge amount of difference. Got a bunch of different stuff we can do with the LFO. You see? You see here with this jitter knob up now, you can see this is actually a sine wave. That I go deep into in my main walkthrough. It's so interesting how this is set up. This gravitation control is killer as well. Haven't demoed any things that in this session that show that in action, but I do in my other video, and it's absolutely amazing, this little thing. So let me just reset the patch again a second. But I'm gonna turn the orbiter off again. And it's an interesting one, I think, this to try switching out filter types. Let me just first bring the spatializer down. So it's got some really gritty sounding filters. Let me reset it, but again, orbiter off. So let's see the spatializer. Again, this spatializer off. I'll just stop the modulation here for a second. Hear the spatializer there? So this can do stuff that's a bit like a resonator, or it can be more like a delay, or more kind of like a reverb. And changing the pitch as well, like it's really interesting. And again, could be modulated. Now, let me just go back to the way the patch is designed to sound. So here, let's turn off the automation. And so now we can just move it around manually. And so one very, very easy and obvious way to change the flavor of many of the Aparillo patches or factory presets is just to go in and, re-record the automation, or, turn the orbiter off, or turn the automated movement off and just move it manually like I'm doing here. You can assign all this to MIDI controllers as well, so you could do it with a few sliders on your MIDI controller or an XY pad or whatever. And then, going in and playing around with the amounts, the radius, the level, and the panning, and so on. So you see now when this comes close to that, everything gets panned to the right. I could set this to pan to the left more. Could bring the radius down and bring the radius of this one down radically as well. So now we're changing that panning. Hours of fun. So, I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed a slightly different format of this video. And I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy. Have a great day or evening wherever you are. Take care.